That was not meant to happen.
I think we're live, though.
I think we're live. So here we go. Oh, my goodness. Welcome to the Scanlon Center for School Mental Health Educator Wellness podcast. Just to kind of get you going here, this podcast was really designed for teachers. It's designed for teachers to learn about different dimensions of their wellness and to become a healthier, happy individual, not only in their own personal lives, but of course, in their school lives as well. My name is Carrie Voljisang, and I am an associate clinical professor in the College of Education at the University of Iowa, and I'm also the director of professional development for the Scanlon Center for School Mental Health and the Baker Teacher Leader Center. Wow, that is a mouthful.
You're fancy.
No, I'm not fancy,
no, I think
but it's just a lot.
Is.
It's a lot of hats. So, I mean, teachers wear a lot of hats. So it's just a lot of hats. And this is our special guest, our expert guest tonight, Dr. Jacob Priest. Welcome, Jacob.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so I'm going to read Jacob's bio, and then we're going to ask Jacob lots and lots of questions. And I want all of you to think of this as like a personal free therapy session. With Dr. Priest.
I'm going to get in trouble.
So start writing questions down, folks, okay? Every time I do an event like this with you, I'm always like, yes, free therapy.
I mean, you just have to invite me over for pizza again. You get free therapy anytime you want.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Jacob Priest is first and foremost a very good friend and colleague of mine. And he also happens to be an associate professor and director of the Couple and Family Therapy Program in the College of Education at the University of Iowa. He also holds a secondary appointment in the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Iowa Carver, I almost said Carver Hawkeye, Carver College of Medicine. Jacob received a BS in Family Studies from Weber State University, an MS in Marriage and Family Therapy from Purdue University, and a PhD in Marriage and Family Therapy from Florida State University. He is a clinician in the UI Healthcare LGBTQ+ clinic, has a private practice in Cedar Rapids, and is the author of The Science of Family Systems Theory, which is on my desk. On
and you
campus,
read it cover to cover.
Cover to cover. It is on. It is on my desk. He lives in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with his wife Chelsea, who is his better half.
That's not wrong. That's not wrong.
Their son Keaton, their daughter Birdie, they're both adorable, and their cats Albert, Woodward, Lyndon, and Cecilia. You only talk about Cecilia when I'm around you.
Well, because
she's your favorite?
No, she's the quasi-feral one that was born under our porch.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's why. Yeah.
She's the one that causes lots of problems.
I only hear about Cecilia.
Similar thing in families. The problem was when you hear about.
Oh, yes. We're going to get into that. Cecilia, we're going to unpack you a little bit later. And all of your issues. So, first of all, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. It's the end of the semester, so it's nice to know that there's a little bit of a pause coming, but I'm not to that pause yet, so hopefully we'll get there.
We'll get there. We have one more week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that lots of the educators who are joining us tonight are also approaching their holiday break and are excited to kind of have a little break and a rest. But we are really coming together tonight to kind of prepare for that break.
Yeah, because it can sometimes not be a break.
Yes, sometimes it's a break. Sometimes we have things that come up over the holidays with friends and family that don't feel very relaxing.
Yes, that is very true. My practice always gets a little bit busier in January.
I imagine it does. So before we start to pick Jacob's brain about how we can maybe prepare ourselves for interacting with all different kinds of people over the holidays, some people who we're very close to, some people who we maybe only see once a year, twice a year, I'm going to remind us a little bit about how this episode specifically directly connects to the 8 dimensions of wellness that we're talking through, and how those dimensions are connecting specifically to our castle competencies, our 5 core competencies. So just bear with me so I can make that direct connection. So we are focusing tonight on our social and emotional dimensions of wellness. And as a reminder, our social dimension refers to our ability to interact successfully with others. And this dimension includes our sense of connectedness and belonging. And we're going to talk about belonging and the importance of belonging tonight. It involves creating and maintaining a healthy support network. Systems is your area of expertise. And some of the skills a person should consider and practice in strengthening this dimension of wellness would include learning how to set and respect boundaries, using effective and empathetic communication skills, being genuine and authentic with others, and treating others in a respectful way. Our emotional dimension is our ability to cope effectively with life and build satisfying relationships with others. Some of the skills a person practices to improve their emotional wellness are managing feelings and behaviors. We have to get through what I wrote today so that we make sure we make these direct connections to your work in healthy ways, particularly during challenging moments in our lives. And so this is why we are all coming together tonight to think through how this plays out. Again, not only in our personal lives, but in our lives at school with our students, families, and colleagues as well. Okay. Over the summer months, when I was planning this series and each month, I started to think about, as many of you know, I've said before, I taught elementary for almost a decade, elementary school. And each month really, at least for me, but I know all my teacher friends, we've talked about this before, really there's something specific that a teacher connects to, like in each month. And so when I get to December, I immediately start to think of, okay, we're kind of at this point, we're like at a breaking point. We need a rest. We need a break. We've had lots of things happen from summer months of planning all the way through December. We also know that we're having to do some additional planning in our house around different holidays. We are getting excited and maybe a little bit fearful about some of the interactions that we may have over the holidays as well. So I'm thinking it would be good to first, let's just start talking about what are the benefits of creating and maintaining healthy relationships in our lives? Like, why does it even matter?
Well, so one of my favorite therapists, Esther Perel, you may have heard of her. She's on lots of podcasts, has great books. She makes a claim, which I agree with, is the quality of our closest relationships determines the quality of our lives, right? I mean, my research and lots of other folks' research looks at how we connect with people predicts not only our mental health, like, depression, anxiety, or how fulfilled we feel in our lives, but also like our physical health, right? So if you have stressful relationships over time, you're going to be at greater risk for chronic illnesses. So they're not only important to like just feeling who we are, being alive, connect, like all those things that make us human, but they're also really important to our health and well-being.
Yeah. Okay, so talk to me about this, because I push back on this sometimes. I mean, not really. I know what the research says about this, and it's very clear, right? But so there are some of us who will say to you or to their therapist or to whomever, I'm an introvert. And I actually don't like hanging out with people all the time. And it makes me feel uncomfortable and it stresses me out. It gives me anxiety. So, like, can you talk to us a little bit about people who tend to actually, like, their cup is full when they have some private time, and like the difference between that and just not having relationships at all?
Yeah, right. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Like one of my favorite bands, Jack's Mannequin, has a great line that says, "Have you ever been alone in a crowded room?" Right. Like that feeling of, like being an introvert, loving to have like space to yourself to reconnect, I think is really healthy. And that doesn't mean you're lonely. Some people need that. They need to be able to not be so social, so connected all the time, because then it actually allows them to connect in the ways they want to.
Yeah.
But being isolated is totally different, right? You can be in multiple relationships, interacting with people, and feel lonely and isolated. And it's in those relationships actually where we see the worst health outcomes, right? Not, the introvert who also has maybe one or two friends they're really close connect with, maybe a partner or, a parent that they're close with, who doesn't, it's not going to go out and be the star of the show.
Yeah.
Those are healthy relationships. It's the person that's embedded in relationships where they don't have a sense of connection and don't have a sense of individuality in those relationships that are really the ones that are unhealthy.
Mm-hmm. How does that happen? Like, how do we learn how to do this?
How do we learn how to be in healthy relationships?
Well, or to even just like make connections.
Yeah.
I mean, we know when we're kids, right? We're kind of forced into it.
Yeah.
Right. And like, we're supposed to practice that then.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like, I hear this so much from adults. How do I make friends?
Right. So, and that's the thing where I don't think we do a very good job when it comes to this kind of education. We don't actually have a theory of what it means to be connected, right? We don't actually have a way to think, we have tools and tricks. And oftentimes those don't actually get it done, right? You can, read on a website like the 10 best ways to find friends if you're a lonely adult. And you go do those, and then you're like sitting at a restaurant trying to awkwardly talk to somebody. You're like, this is terrible.
Yeah, that's depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As someone who online dated in their 30s, I know it can be depressing. It can be not very fun. But if you have a theory of what connection is, you have more options to respond, right? Like if you just have tools, but no reason why those tools should work, then the tools themselves, like if you gave me a hammer, I have no theory on how to build a house. I could be like, well, yeah, you nail stuff to other things, but it's not going to help me build a house, right? If I had the knowledge, okay, these are the plans, this is what this needs to look like, this is what you do first, second, then you have that. But we don't give people that for relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then it makes me wonder, okay, so we're not necessarily like explicitly teaching these tools in schools or maybe in other areas of our life, maybe people who go to church, maybe I don't know, different areas of our lives. But also then I start to think things that were modeled to us as we were growing up, and like not only like how that shapes how we resolve conflict, which I want to get into conflict a little bit later, but like how we interact with people, our expectations of what relationships might be. Can you talk to us a little bit about how like just that family system, our direct family system and experience with that system then impacts the way we build connection with other people?
Yeah. So as you said, I have two kids. One of them is going to be 9 months in 6 days from now. She can't talk. She can't say her name. She can't ask for what she wants. We've had millions and millions of tiny interactions.
Yeah.
Those things that we have done have shaped who I am in relationship to her and in who she is in relationship to me. And so if you think about that, even before we're cognitively aware, we already learn how to be in relationships by the people that are closest to us. And so when we can actually sit back and think and reflect on our relationships, which takes a long time, even sometimes clear into adulthood, we don't actually see that these patterns that we've learned, how they affect us, because we see them as this is what the relationship is. We don't actually see that there's opportunities or options to be different in these relationships.
I mean, shit, like that is so, what you just said to me is so heavy because I mean, I'm still working on this, right? And this is like, I mean, I've worked in this field of social emotional behavioral health for 20 years. And I still think about and have to unpack like why I'm responding to things in a certain way and why it's triggering different responses and emotions and why I'm reacting the way I'm reacting. And nearly through lots of training, therapy,
I love my therapist, so
I can kind of walk back. And like it's because I can usually remember a moment in time in my childhood that I can match whatever emotion I'm feeling in that moment and why I'm feeling uncomfortable to a specific time in my childhood when I was seeing something that evoked that kind of emotion and how scared I was.
Yeah. Right. And if you think about this, we talk about patterns in relationships, and these patterns get seared into our lives, our brains, our bodies, right?
Our bodies.
If you think about Vessel van der Kolk wrote the book The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
Right. And that's about how trauma, our reaction to these terrible events, actually gets embedded into who we are. And so sometimes we're reacting to things in a way that in some ways makes total sense to us, but we have no idea why, or makes no sense to us, but it's just what we do.
Yeah.
And it is these, that's often easier to see when there are these big events. But then also take, these big events aren't always there. These little interactions, right? It does two things. It shows us how we exist in a relationship, but also we get our sense of identity from the relationships we're embedded in.
Yeah.
Right? If I say I am a father, husband, brother, uncle, grandson, nephew, those are all identity markers, but they are talking about a relationship. And when I am in those things, when I inhabit that identity, I'm a little bit different in how I interact.
Yeah. So do you think it's a good idea, because you mentioned, how we have these identities and those identities are really relationships. Do you think it's a good idea for us to sit down and like maybe really critically think through what that relationship actually means to you? So like, what does it mean to be a son? What does it mean to be a teacher? What does it mean to be a wife or a daughter or whatever? Would that be helpful to somebody?
I think so, because if you think about it, when you said all of those things, when I said all of those identity relationship markers, there is already big cultural narratives around what that means.
Yes.
Right? And oftentimes, because those narratives are there, because the interactions are happening, we don't think about it.
Yeah.
All we do is think about like, oh, I'm a dad. This is what dads do. It's most apparent when you see the discrepancies, right? So I live in Cedar Rapids. We used to live really close to Beaver Park. One morning, they were doing, this activity in Beaver Park, and I took my two kids there, right? I rolled up there, with my big 2-seater stroller. I got my son out, who was, like 2 at the time, because he's 2.5 now. And, we start doing this activity, and, I'm interacting with my daughter, and the women come up to me like, oh, there's super dad. Look at you.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Here we go.
And so, yeah. And so my wife does the exact same thing, right? She will take, like this morning, every Wednesday morning, she takes the kids to Storytime, the library. Does anybody call her super mom for taking 2 kids somewhere? No, right? Because the cultural narrative or expectation is dictating what is considered, what is considered normal for in one relationship, because of your identity marker, is considered amazing for another person, right? And that inequity shapes how we interact.
Okay, so pause.
Yes.
We're going to pause.
Okay.
We're pausing. We have educators in here. So let's unpack what people think about teachers and what teachers need to be in order to be valued.
Yeah.
Teachers have to be on all the time. They have to be completely selfless or they're not a good teacher. They have to be totally accommodating at all times or they're a terrible, they're really not a very good teacher. They have to take home all of their work with them. If you think about this identity in our culture that we've built around what it means to be a teacher, and then if you choose to set boundaries and not do that, how that impacts your relationship with your family, with your colleagues, with your students, with their families.
Yeah, right?
It's like nuts,
no,
right?
Well, yeah, like I did it today. I was talking to teachers in Waukee about social emotional learning. And I
forgot you were there today.
Well, yeah, it was virtual.
Oh, I thought you went.
No, I'm going somewhere else in January in person.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure I emailed you about that and I have forgotten now. We'll talk about that later.
Anyway, but like, if you think about that, why do we want that expectation? Well, because it allows us some predictability, right? Most of these narratives we have around people help us navigate in a predictable world, but oftentimes they become these what we're supposed to be in, these identities become so narrow, so restrictive. So if you step out of the line where you're going to be viewed as bad or wrong or different, that it makes it so there's no place for real connection or individuality in that space, right? We ask teachers to, teach math, science, all this stuff. Oh, and take care of the mental health of your students, right? It's an impossible task.
It's an impossible job.
Right? And also, being perfect in any identity or in any relationship is also impossible. And what I think the main thing we can do to have healthy relationships is learn to mess up well and to adapt based on those mess ups.
Okay. This is a good segue.
Oh, I love a good segue.
Yeah, this is a good segue. But first, before we kind of make a little bit of a pivot here, I want to welcome all of you who are joining us tonight to take advantage of Jacob. And please feel free, if you have comments, anything about relationships, particularly relationships that you might be experiencing or having difficulties with in your life, then feel free to like pop them in the comment section, and we'll start to kind of filter some of them and take them as we see them come up. So feel free to do that. Okay, so okay, so let's shift to conflict.
Yes.
Okay. So I've been thinking about conflict a lot in my life. Probably the last, well, you know my journey, so I won't unpack all of it.
We don't need to do your therapy session here. We'll do that after.
after. But okay, so I want to talk a little bit how conflict kind of I don't know if shapes is right, shapes our relationship or enters into our relationship and impacts our relationship. And so we know that conflict is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like over the holidays, we all kind of do this thing. I know I do. I suppose it depends on who your family is.
You get ready for, okay, I know this is coming.
Yeah, we like armor up, in the words of Brené Brown.
Yes.
And we get our defense mechanisms ready to go. And we start to like emotionally, mentally prepare, and even like sometimes rehearse.
Oh yeah.
Like how we're gonna shut shit down.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're just and we're just so ready for it. So I was listening to this. So I like Hidden Brain. Do you listen to Hidden Brain?
Yes, I do listen to Hidden Brain. It's a great podcast.
It's a great podcast. And so I was listening to Hidden Brain. I wrote this down. So they were talking about conflict, and conflict causes all kinds of uncomfortable feelings, right? So it causes like hurt, anger, animosity, fear, shame, stress, all of this, right? So let's face it, when we feel that conflict in a relationship, it can destroy a relationship. On Hidden Brain, someone asked this question that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. How can we do conflict better? Not erase it, because it's everywhere. So instead of thinking about, I'm going to avoid conflict, I'm going to shut it down, I'm going to rehearse how I'm going to shut that down and get them to be quiet, and not, so that I don't feel this way. How can we actually lean into it and know that this is part of life and do it better?
I love this question. I'm really glad you asked it. And I love the setup. Love the setup. So I'm going to jump back to what I said first. You know how we don't have a theory of relationships? I'm going to give you the 500-foot version of mine. So relationships are inherently conflictual because the interactions that have to occur in them are always opposed to each other. We've been talking kind of around this a little bit, but in every relationship, there are two important, processes, interactions that are always constantly happening. I want to belong and I want to be me. Right? And so when you think about that, that is constant conflict. And what comes up in the middle of that? All right, I'm monitoring the threats that might make it so I lose me or I lose you or I lose us. Right? And so if we're going to do conflict better, we actually move it from the content of we're arguing about money, we're arguing about
Politics.
Politics. You play too many video games. I get a lot of this stuff, right? And instead you say, okay, how are these impulses of threat response, connection, individuality structuring an interactive dance that we do? Right? And once you can see the pattern, it's actually much easier to shift it. The problem is when we have conflict, because it makes us feel uncomfortable, we just want to stop it. Like, no, I'm right, you're wrong. You see that? And then it doesn't stop it. Then you're like, fine, you're right, I'm wrong. But that conflict still exists. And what the thing is about conflict and that tension between those interactions is that it feels like it has to be that dichotomy. Someone has to win the conflict, someone has to lose. But conflict better is about seeing the pattern and owning, okay, this is what I do in the pattern. This is how I see the pattern. Do you see it that way? And when you do that, then you have all of this incredible ability to shift. Yeah. And the cool thing about that is why I think it's so important to have conflict in relationships. It allows you to create something new, right? When we restructure the interactions, our relationship, we're creating not only a new sense of we, but a new sense of me too.
Okay, but what if I am right?
Well,
I'm kind of teasing.
I mean, I know you, Karen. I know you are right. Right.
But what if they are wrong?
Yeah. Right. And so,
but what if you get into that? Like, what if they? Okay, so what if Uncle Joe comes to the
love Uncle Joe?
Yeah, he's a character, but he comes to the table over the holidays, and he actually just starts spewing things that are totally inaccurate and offensive.
Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, so is your Thanksgiving like my Thanksgiving?
No, not anymore. I've done things to shut down conflict.
So I think two things, right? If someone is attacking you and an identity you hold, I don't feel that in that point you have the responsibility to try to connect that. If you're having an argument with somebody that says you don't exist or you are inferior because you are this, that is not conflict. Yes. That is just
bullying,
bigotry, bullying, those types of things, right?
It's different.
But if somebody is really trying to engage with you to have a conversation about how you see things differently, I think that is essential to a good relationship. It's just that they might not go about it well. I get asked around the holidays a lot to talk, how do you manage relationships across the holidays, right? Just like we're talking about. Don't have those conversations at the dinner table. If you really want to have, if Uncle Joe wants to talk politics with you, you can say, hey, I'd love to have this conversation. We're not talking about this right now. Let's just enjoy our mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Right? Like move it to a different, because the context of conflict is also really important. You can't decouple the interactions that are creating conflict with the context, right? If the person if you're in conflict with it has been really unsafe, hurtful in the past, then unless and until that's removed, engaging in trying to shift that relationship is going to be problematic.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question that I think we need to pause. Okay. Thoughts on conflict between significant others when their family relations differ due to different cultures?
Okay. I love this question.
I do too.
So let me share a story first that my therapist shared with me.
Okay.
And it's one of my favorites. It was actually a story about her parents. So my therapist, she has since retired, but I worked with her for a really long time. And so she was, when I started working with her, in her mid 60s, right? So her parents, grew up in the early 1920s, 1930s. And they dated for 10 years, right? Which is very atypical.
Wow, that is.
And why? Well, one was Protestant, Lutheran, one was Catholic.
Okay.
Right? And if we think about significant cultural divides, especially in Iowa, that was a big one. They loved each other and they couldn't figure out in a short period of time how to mesh these cultures. But what were they able to do? Because it was so important to them, they took the time to establish, understand, structure a relationship in a way where my therapist said, and I believe her, they had one of the best marriages I've ever seen. Right? They didn't follow a script, but they learned from the differences that were there to build something that was uniquely there. And I think a similar thing can happen on how we use conflict when there is difference across cultures, right? Because cultures carry their own, expectations, norms, traditions, rituals, all those types of things. And it's easy to want to just pit the I'm right, you're wrong, we do it my way, no, we do it my way. But if you really can organize conversations, interactions around these experiences that are not asking anybody to abandon or totally shut down or disconnect from their culture, you can create something that is unique to your relationship, to your family, to your system. And I think when we do that, you asked the question earlier, like we have these narratives that are so powerful. And, how do we get out of those? I think in some ways that's how you do it. You say, these are the expectations. This is what we created for us. And this is better than what we could have had if we just did it one way or the other.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the work that we're trying to do in schools right now in terms of like shifting like deficit models to asset-based models and thinking through culture and climate and how we use all of our differences as an asset.
Yeah. Like, I think sometimes, we're in a hyper political environment, right? And that pushes us towards right and wrong. And that ends discussion. That ends actually when you are so polarized, you can't adapt a relationship, a system in that way. Right. And so in other words, by moving so far, we lose the opportunity to actually adapt. And so that's why I think it's important to value difference.
Yeah.
Because your lived experience is different than my lived experience.
Totally.
Right. But because we know that, we know things about each other, it makes our friendship so much richer, right?
Oh my, because we couldn't have been raised more differently.
Right? No, like if we would have met each other in like junior high, we'd have been like, who are you? Right?
Yeah.
But because of those lived experiences, we get thrown into a system where we get to interact.
Yeah.
And it becomes not only like fun, but also like, because I know you, my career has gotten a big boost because you have provided me with opportunities like this that I'm really thankful for. Right.
Oh, well, that's really sweet. And it goes both ways.
Well, I appreciate that too, but no, like I really mean that. Like, I think that because of you and your excellence, and part of that is you like lift other people up, you have really done that and given, like, just like this platform, right? You didn't need to invite me. I'm just the guy in the office down the hall. But but the reason why I think some ways we have a friendship is because we are so different.
Yeah, I do too. I think we're at a point we've learned, right? And I this is one of the things that I love about my job is I meet so many different people. I go to really small school districts. And I go to our larger urban areas. I do work internationally. So, I'm in and out of the country talking to people who are in the education field. And one thing that I think I've learned a lot, particularly over the last probably 5 years, is to shut my mouth and listen. Because people have some really interesting stories.
Yeah.
And you can learn so much about like their delivery, what they're interested in, and why they keep bringing certain points up in conversation, why they want to just talk to you about certain things in general based off of their lived experiences. And I think that's one thing that we don't do a great job of teaching our kids how to do is like, okay, because you know what? We don't oftentimes listen to them very well.
Oh, yeah. I agree, right? I deal with that in my practice. Like when I'm working with families, a lot of times what I'll see is kids really want to share a message with parents. And parents are like, no, that's wrong. So I'm going to shut that down. And I have to help parents coach them, like, just listen, hear, be interested, ask questions. You don't have to change your mind. But actually, as you talked about, leaning into the conflict or really just, I talk with clients all the time, like ask 2 or 3 follow-up questions before you give your opinion.
Yes.
Because do you know what that's going to do? it communicates to the other person your ideas, what you're saying. I'm listening and I value it.
Yeah, you taught me this actually a long time ago. I mean, I think Griffin was like in junior high. And like Griffin, I don't know, Griffin might be even listening right now. He's my 21-year-old. And he's great, by the way. He's a junior.
I actually think I love him.
He's a junior here at the University of Iowa. But, we went through some challenging times as an adolescent. And I remember you saying that to me one time. We were at our dining room table.
Yeah, I do remember this conversation. Yes, I do remember this conversation. And you were like,
you just keep like correcting him. Like, just ask him some more questions.
I gave you therapy.
Of course you did. And I'm not saying it fixed all the problems. Like, of course, that's never going to happen. But it did help. And I use that all the time now. Like, especially when I'm starting to feel frustrated, I'm like, just keep asking questions. Mm-hmm. Just try to understand.
Yeah. Because like we often, when, we hear something we don't agree with, the goal is to shut it down. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think in certain situations, in certain conversations, that is acceptable. That is the right thing to do. And in most conversations, especially ones that are really important that can enact change, leaning into that, asking those questions can be a huge difference, right? Mm-hmm. Can I share a story?
Absolutely.
Sorry, this is maybe some of you have heard this, but it's like but I'll tell our audience, I grew up Mormon, right? And Mormon theology isn't really accepting of gay and lesbian, especially gay and lesbian relationships. So I grew up in that context, right? And I go to graduate school at Purdue in 2008. If you remember 2008, that was the California Proposition 8, which the Mormon Church was heavily invested in, both, getting their members to canvass and talk to folks and spending lots of money to codify in California as marriage between a man and a woman. So we're in a couple and family therapy program. We're going to talk about this. Mm-hmm. Now, within the cohort of students, there was 9 of us. There's people who were bisexual, who were lesbian, who had all sorts of, sexual identities. And I knew this. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about this. And what does 2008 Mormon Jacob do?
Well, you told me, but please share. Yeah.
No, this isn't right. This is not what God wants. This is wrong. Now, I was told that they would respond to me by saying I was a bad person and hypocrite. That's what I was told. I was waiting for them. I was like, okay, tell me I'm terrible. Tell me I'm wrong. And they didn't. They said, wow, okay, tell us more about that. After the conversation, like the classmates came up to me and said, hey, you said this. I want to know where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. Right. And to me, that was a huge shift in my life. Before this podcast, I was literally being in a court hearing for a trans kid who's trying to get access to care. Mm-hmm. And if I don't have that conversation, mm-hmm. and if those people don't have this inviting me into that conversation, mm-hmm. my life looks really different right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we can actually grow and build something that's so much different, but better than we might expect.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and we don't have to, no, it's a great story. I mean, because it's really using a strategy and showing how other people even just use an authentic strategy to try to better understand you and to build a bridge and a connection, even if you don't agree.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. In our lives, but also in our work as teachers. Yeah. We're going to meet colleagues and parents and students who don't have the same values that we do or agree with all of it, but we can still build relationships.
Yeah. There's a difference between being in a relationship with someone and wholly ascribing and believing, what they believe.
Absolutely.
Those two things can exist.
We have a great question here. Oh, wait, sorry. Okay. Has there ever been a time where a couple has come to seek, we've talked about this before, seek counseling and you realize they're better off separate than together? And if so, how did you handle that?
Yeah. So I tell a lot of my couples that the the end goal of my therapy with you isn't necessarily to have you stay together, right? Some people grow out of relationships. Some relationships don't have staying power, and that can be a problem, right? Not every successful marriage ends until death do you part.
Mhm.
Sometimes the success is realizing that you need to let go of that in order for the two people to be their best selves. That said, there isn't ever a time where I say like, oh yeah, you two shouldn't be together. Like I'm not going to make that choice for them because they know way more about what's going on in their lives than I do. And I don't ever think that you want to take that off the table in your relationship, right? Some people say like, oh, there's nothing that could ever happen that would lead to us breaking up.
I agree.
That's not true, right?
Like, I mean, I used to say, I said that in my 20s,
yeah, right?
But now, like at 45 and single, like when I meet a guy and he will say something like that to me, I'm like, red flag, moving on.
Right,
We're not doing that.
Real commitment, I think, in a relationship is having real expectations and real boundaries around what violates trust. And if that trust is being consistently violated,
you got to move on.
Yeah. I mean, it may be hard. It's not always that easy, especially because there's a lot invested. But sometimes that's the best outcome.
Sometimes it is the best outcome. Absolutely, it's the healthiest thing to do. Sometimes, yeah. Okay, we have about 15 minutes left, and so I think it might be a really good idea for us to do if you could do like, okay, we're going into the holidays. What are some things that we should be doing to prepare ourselves? Kind of talk through some of them, but maybe we could just like specifically name like 3 or 4.
All right. Have a plan. Right? And what do I mean by a plan? Like you can ask my wife, I am not someone that's going to schedule out, this is here, this is there. Some people are that, and that's a great plan to have. But have a plan for what you're opting into and what you're opting out of.
Okay.
And communicate that plan ahead of time, right? In many families, there's one person who is like the caretaker of the holiday. You're going to go to their house. They're going to organize everything. They're going to cook the food. They're going to wrap the presents. That might be you, many of you listening or watching on this podcast. And oftentimes what we do is we say like, oh, okay, we get there. Okay, I was here. This is too much. I'm gone. And we don't communicate that, right? We don't actually say, hey, I'm going to be here for this, not going to be here for this, but I'll be back for this. And, it may hurt that person that they're going through all this effort to do all this and you're going to opt out of some. But what would hurt the person more is if you don't respect them enough to communicate that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I always say. Like this is my mom. My mom loves Christmas. She loves having her family all together.
I've seen the pictures.
You've seen the pictures. My mom is
it's gorgeous.
It's Christmas Martha Stewart, right? My mom has her own present wrapping room. She has a present wrapping room that started 3 months ago, and she's like,
and bless her soul.
She loves
seriously, it is wonderful.
And so she has texted us, hey, this is what we're thinking. Let me know where you're going to be, right? Because we live far away, so we'll probably be there for everything because we have extra hands to take care of our kids and we don't get to see as much. But my other siblings who live closer, they have other family members that are going to be there, and they're going to go spend time. And my mom understands that. And sure, she would wish that, her family, in my mom's perfect world, we would be there for 3 weeks. Everybody would be under the same roof, all of that. And she loves that, but she understands that can't be realistic. But she's communicated a plan to us, and it's our job to follow up with that plan.
Okay, I'm going to throw a wrench in the wheel.
Yes, throw a wrench in it.
Okay, you have a partner. And what if you are like, I can't wait to go home. I can't wait to spend a month under my parents' roof. A week, whatever the time period is, and your partner is like, oh hell no, we're not doing this, I can't have this. So like there's I think I know what your answer is going to be, but there's clearly some differences in terms of how you want to spend your holidays. What do we do?
So first, if my partner's thoughts are because they don't feel safe, they don't feel like they are welcome, that's a different conversation, right? If there's just a history of tension and conflict, or I can't spend that much time with your family. That's a more malleable conversation. I'm going to assume we're doing that one.
Okay.
To me, I would say, okay, you don't want to be there for a month. I don't think.
Can you imagine?
No. That is the recommendation. Do not. I mean, actually,
that's the plan.
I mean, maybe some folks like love that, like going to stay with their parents for a month. I mean, in some ways, I feel like grandma and grandpa take care of your kids.
Depends on how big the house is.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, your parents' house is huge,
Yeah,
so they can accommodate.
There you go. But like, I think that it's okay too to say like, all right, well, you know, and this again is under like if they lived like 20, 30 minutes away, like I'm going to go to this, you stay home.
Yeah.
Let's be there for the most important event. And I think, you know, if you can make an effort for me, I will have a conversation with them of what they need to do. I can navigate this boundary for you. I can go to bat for you. And I think you showing up, putting forth the effort would really mean a lot to me too. And so I think that there's a way to navigate that. I also think that you do have to allow your partner some flexibility, some autonomy in what they're participating in, right? Because not everybody gets along. Like you have families, it's just not always you're not always gonna get along, and being able to opt in or opt out, I think, is really important.
So basically what you're saying is you actually have to like communicate in a kind way.
Well, yes, right? Like part of that is that, you know, like we talk about skills, and, you know, I always laugh a little bit because couples always come to me and I say, what brings you to therapy? And they say communication issues. And that can mean anything.
Yeah.
Right? Communication. And so if I just said, oh, great, communication issues. All right, here's the speaker listener technique. Oh, now your marriage is fixed. It doesn't work like that. But there is value. And when we talk about communication techniques, the most important one is slowing down.
Yeah.
Is actually, hold on, where are you coming from? Wait a second. Did I get this right?
Mm-hmm.
No, like say that again. No, I'm not quite getting that. Wait, did you hear what I'm saying? I want to make sure you get, you know, slowing that down actually allows for good communication because it allows us to absorb, feel, express what's going on for us.
You know, there was an episode, I think it was on Hidden Brain, that talked about the slowing down of communication and how essential it is in like all parts of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's great. Okay. We're going to take a little bit of a break on the steps. So plan is number one, but I really want to get to Olivia's question here because I think it's a really good one. Yikes. Yeah. So how would you deal with sadness that family members are excluding you, even if you don't normally enjoy your time with us? Oh, yeah, that's kind of complicated, isn't it? So you're sad that you're being excluded, but you don't necessarily enjoy your time with those people anyway. Like, I get it, though.
Yeah, like,
I get it.
You're not invited. Well, I wouldn't want to be invited anyway, but I'm also sad that I'm not invited.
Because it's going back to that innate feeling that it's like this necessary feeling of belonging that we have to have as human beings in our community.
So, two thoughts on that. The first one is we do put a lot of pressure on togetherness during the holidays. And right, if your only sense of trying to fix connection comes about every December, that's not going to happen. Like if you're lonely and wish you could be with your family the next holiday season, start that conversation in January.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have that time. Also, that's a normal feeling. And I think it can be too that sometimes the family we are born into isn't the family we need to be with. Right? Sometimes, you know,
yeah, just say that one more time.
The family we're born into is not the family we need to be with.
Yeah.
You know, I deal with a lot of like young adults, you know, or early people in their early 30s, and they're really upset that their parents aren't who they want them to be. And they're like, why don't my parents get this? Why don't they change? I was like, do you want you to be in a relationship with this person or do you want them to be different? Right? Because those are two different things, right? People are going to be who they are, and you trying to change that is actually the best way to avoid building a relationship. Rather, what it is having reasonable, rational expectations for what certain people can provide you. You may never have the dad that is going to be cheering you on at your soccer games or puts his arms around you and says you love him. And that doesn't mean that your dad is a bad person. It means that the expectations and limitations that maybe he's experienced that you may not even know are there, and you can still be connected to him. It just can't be a narrative, a story, an expectation that that person is incapable of.
Yeah. That was a big one.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like
really trying to see who people really are and having a relationship with really who they are.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like, we even think about like social and emotional learning is like, we all want to do this. Well, we all don't.
Yeah.
Some people are like, no, this is all you're going to get from me. Mm-hmm. Take it or leave it. And sometimes you have to trust them at that. Sometimes not only that, they might not say that, but that's all they might be capable of.
Yeah, and I think even I'm thinking about students right now too. I mean, I was having some student issues this week with some kiddos and teachers, and just wanting a student to care about school and getting into this back and forth of like, well, you should care about this because it's part of your future, and like kind of this back and forth about what they should care about. But we can't make that determination for them. Mm-mm. We have to try to understand where they're coming from and who they are, and then build the relationship from there. And sometimes that means like maybe not even having conversations about that content, or because they're just in that place right now.
Yeah. So in therapy training, we call that working harder than the client. Right? So a lot of times people come to therapy and they get the client they get the therapist to try to do the work, right? They're basically saying like, oh, well, have you tried this? What if you do this, think through this, go through that? Oh, I got all these options for you. We can solve this problem this way. And then they come back week after week like, oh, that didn't work, right? It's that same idea. Yeah, it's the same. If we are working harder for a relationship than someone else, we're actually not in a relationship with them.
Oh my God. This is what's wrong with my life. And with every person in my life. Why do I do this? We're going to talk about that later.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see here. What is this one? In the name of salary transparency.
What are your salaries from being a therapist? Oh yeah, I mean, you can look it up on Iowa. So I have a kind of a different job, right? Like my Iowa salary is what I do to train therapists. But most therapists, depending on health insurance, are going to be billing for about a 50-minute hour, anywhere from 100 to 150 to, in certain areas, like $200 plus. Like I know if you want to find somebody in Denver or Chicago these days, you're probably paying $250 out of pocket per hour. So that's not what I get, but
he gets pizza at my house.
Pizza and tea.
And tea. He gets pizza and tea.
I mean, so it varies, and typically it's about insurance reimbursement, or if they're private pay, they're going to set their own standards, and that's typically at market value, depending on the area you are.
Okay, we have about 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
Give us one more. What else should we do to prepare ourselves? We have a plan.
So when we think about connection, we think about conversation. That's a terrible way to connect. Not all the time, but especially if we're in a fractured relationship, like, if it's Uncle Joe that you only see every once in a while, if you go out and, I don't know, you play a round of pickleball with Uncle Joe.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Right? Like all of a sudden. So like, for example, I actually have an uncle I'm really close to, but we couldn't be further apart when it comes to political, religious beliefs or anything, but we're really close. We had a family reunion. We were on the same pickleball team. We knew that because we got assigned early. We made t-shirts, we bought headbands, and we had a great time. And then, you know what? When we had other conversations, it made them flow so much easier.
Of course.
Right. So, like at the holidays, we're like, okay, let's sit around. Let's have a conversation now. That's a great way to actually not have a meaningful conversation. You can have the interaction, the connection first. It's like sometimes like when people go on first dates, they have coffee and they talk. I think that can be great. But if you just keep doing that, you're going to miss out on opportunities and experience to really know if you connect with that person. Right. I mean, like, that's how all of my first dates went. But typically after that, I want to do something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
so what did you and Chelsea do?
On our second date, what did we do?
Did you make her dinner on your first date?
No, that was like third or fourth date. Because
okay.
For context, knowing like Carrie was privy to all of my dating with my now wife. She was literally
even before the wife.
yeah. When I say dating in my early 30s, it was all last year in Iowa.
It was actually fantastic.
She would get all the stories and be like, all right, is it happy hour yet? We're going to Pullman.
We're going to Pullman. That was it at the time. Yeah. Okay, I like that. So, okay, so let's do maybe one more question before we kind of shut things down for the night. I like to keep it around 50 to 60 minutes because I know.
I mean, I'm not that interesting, so
I'm not either. But
nobody's that interesting.
But hopefully, we're offering some good advice here and some good tips, maybe. So what's here? Let me put this on the screen. What type of role can teachers play in being frontline for the mental? I think this is a really good question because we oftentimes say that you are on the front line because you're basically you are the first person oftentimes that students are building connection with and relationships with, and even oftentimes the first person that they will come to and talk to them about something that they're struggling with.
Yeah.
Jacob, do you want to take that or do you want me to?
I can take it and I'll let you chime in too.
Yeah.
My thought is the role you can play is, for lack of a better phrase to steal from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean by that? Like, I don't believe in good therapy, meaning like there's not one way to go in there and like this is what's going to be good. It's a process of actually figuring out like, oh, that didn't work, this didn't work, oh, that seemed okay. And that's the same thing when we're dealing with students. You're not like, even if you got all the training, mental health first aid, QPR, Imagine Iowa, all of that, you're not going to do it perfectly. I don't do therapy perfectly all the time. But what it is, it's about showing up.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're going to show up in the way you want to every single time for every single student. But hopefully, if everybody's trying to show up, if all the adults in the school, in their lives are trying, that is going to make it so everybody's kind of involved in this process. And so there's much more of a net to catch people.
And I think that's the key right there. You know, I think we're telling, we're not telling teachers this, but I think teachers are receiving messages right now that are really damaging with regards to they have to be the mental health professional in the classroom. And we don't want them to be. We want them to be teachers. But in order for that to happen, we have to do a better job of building systems that support students, systems that support families, systems that support teachers. And then connecting, making sure that there's like explicit connection within those systems so that teachers know who to go to, how to go to them when they're really seeing a student struggling. So it's not just weighing on you solely and you're the one that's managing it on your own, but there's a team of people in this system that can all kind of chip in and support whoever is struggling in that moment. And it actually might not even be a student. We need to do a much better job of supporting our colleagues as well. And we'll talk about that during like our occupational dimension of wellness in one of our episodes, and how we need to come together as a community, as a teaching community with our administration and with different organizations who support the field of education to make this happen. And that's one of the missions of the Scanlon Center too, is to try to work with the state of Iowa, with the AEAs, with school districts across the state to build really healthy systems of support.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. I mean, it's always a journey. There's not like a finish line, right? There's a journey, but I do think that we can do a much better job of creating these systems to support teachers in particular. I think that's a great question to part ways on. Yeah, and to move into my own personal
so we'll turn the camera. Well, do we want to leave it on? We'll just kind of see if people want to like parachute in and listen to our.
They don't need to hear. They don't want to hear.
Actually, they probably do, but maybe you don't want to share.
I don't know. It's scary. Let's scare people. Okay, I really appreciate all of you joining us tonight, and I hope you come back in January. We're going to be in a new year. in January. And if you just follow us on our YouTube channel or on Facebook, or I think we're on Twitter as well. You can also find us on our webpage. If you just Google Scanlon Center for School Mental Health and go to the professional development page, or you can go to our clinic page or whatever kind of resources you're needing. We are there and we are happy to interact with you. Yep, we put our link in the chat there. So good night, everyone. Have a happy holiday. Bye-bye.